Okay, we are recording.
Okay.
I'm
Hello.
I'm Rachel Lockhart, and I read the Nordic report.
I'm Colleen Cox, and I also read the Nordic report.
I am Stephanie Harrod. I read the 2017 library edition.
Okay, so I'll start us off with the Nordic report, which was kind of interesting. I picked it because I just seemed to like the different topics that were in there than the other choices that we had. So as I like, my whole takeaway from the whole Nordic report was just that I don't know what's going on in the Nordic area, but it seems like they're way more advanced than I would say many of our American schools. Just with all the things, when I'm looking at their trends, it seems like their trends, their old trends are kind of like our new trends. So that was the first big thing. And so when I read through the articles, there was one that really stood out to me, which was the artificial intelligence article. And it stood out to me because they were talking about how they're using AIs in the classroom. And I know some of us are already using programs like that, programs like iStation, iReady, which kind of tracks students' growth over time and makes it more personalized learning. But when I was reading the article, they have artificial intelligence or robots that are actually working in classrooms with kids. So things like if students have special needs, they have some like this artificial intelligence that will help calm them down and track them. And there was a further reading section that talked about Pearson, that big company in the United States, is actually creating software to track kids throughout their entire career that it could actually go with them to college. So you have one AI that's with you in kindergarten that goes forward. And it kind of just started to make me think about job security in a way, I guess. I think teachers always think that we can do it better, but as we see how fast that technology can grow and change over time, thinking about applications like Siri, how they can hear everything you say. If you have something in the classroom that can track everything that a child says, or can scan the room and look at what children are writing and quickly analyze, it kind of got scary for a moment of how secure are our jobs for that long. So the ISTE standard that I connected it with was advocacy for equitable access to educational technology, digital content and learning opportunities to meet diverse needs of students. And I just thought how an AI could do so much more than, I guess, a human in a sense in the classroom by analyzing data. So I guess, what are your thoughts on if you've used AI in the classroom or job security? Just me quickly rattling off those things. What are your thoughts?
Well, in my district, there is a program called the Connect program, which is essentially that. The kid is on the tablet getting the lesson. There's still a teacher in the room at that point, and the teacher's role is supposed to like watch the data, watch the kid's progress. And if they notice something, they're supposed to pull them into a small group. That's what it's supposed to be. Now, my school doesn't have it implemented yet, but the high school that my kids feed into does. And every year I have kids put into this Connect program, and they come back to see me and they're like, "Miss, it is horrible. I hate it." And I'm like, "Okay, well, why?" And like, "My teacher just sits in the corner." And I'm like,
Well, that's good at least that because if the kids aren't happy with it, they're probably not doing their best, and so maybe that means that like there is that job security is there, because kids aren't necessarily going to do well, because I think part of teaching is that connection. So it's really tough if you aren't making those connect, like you can't connect with a computer. So like for them, it's just work, it's work all the time versus getting that personal interaction. And then going back in the Nordic reading, when Colleen, you were talking about how far behind we are, and bringing that up since we're talking about like digital assessments this week, I thought it was interesting that they mentioned that in Norway and Denmark, they're already doing national digital assessments. like through these big companies, and then all of their like formative assessments are through learning management systems. So I thought that was crazy, you know, because they're like one-to-one, which the majority of our schools aren't. So I think we definitely have some catching up to do there. And then they also talked about something, they were talking about coding as a literacy, and how their code.org recently projected that by 2020, there will be 1.4 million computing jobs, but only 400,000 computer science students to fill them. So they've started, like Finland makes coding a part of the core curriculum, and the other countries are embedding coding into primary and secondary education, like into the curriculum. Like, so they all have started adding coding into their stuff, which I'm like, for us, it's, you know, here and there you have a coding class, or maybe as an elective, or a couple kids doing it that like gaming. But really, I think that's somewhere where we really need to go if that's where the jobs are.
Right. Second grade. Oh man. Like I don't even, that's.
Yeah, I remember reading that too, and just kind of thinking how far behind we are. I think we touch on it, or we constantly say STEM, like let's have some STEM activities, but to see them doing it at such a young age, and again, just preparing kids for jobs that don't exist yet. I do agree with you and the report that we're kind of really behind the ball on that.
Stephanie, do you want to tell us about yours?
Yeah. So biggest takeaway from me in the library edition of the report was 68% of research starts on Google, which at first when I read that, I was like, what? And then when I started thinking about it, I was like, yeah, I can see that. Like my kids, if I ask them something, they're like, I'll Google it. And then I thought about myself, self-reflection, and I do it too. And it also like went with that libraries are kind of putting less books in there and focusing more on the digital aspect. So their actual space is having to change because their patrons are bringing their devices rather than going to look for books. So they're having to like up the Wi-Fi, up the number of outlets, and have like extra USB connections and all that stuff. It also did touch on like the makerspace aspect too. Like even on college campuses, they're incorporating those ideas, not just in the primary school. Another thing that they mentioned was sharing resources. So like not one campus having all the digital resources because they're expensive to like accumulate and keep. So like being willing to share like from this university to this university, and which would translate into public school too, like libraries, interloans, and getting other people products that they could use in a maker space or something like that. So I thought that was pretty interesting that libraries are getting less books and more technology driven, which is not a bad thing. They can do it all. It's just a shift in thinking.
Right. And ours actually talked on that note too about like redesigning in the midterm trends. They talked about redesigning learning spaces to make them more student centered. So I think they're kind of, you know, in Norway, it seems like in Scandinavia, they're kind of trying to do that with their libraries as well. And one of the ISTE standards that I thought went really well with my report was Empowered Learner D. It's understand the fundamental concepts of technology operations and demonstrate the ability to choose and troubleshoot. And I thought that was interesting with the coding because it really does teach those maker spaces that I talked about. It really goes with those problem solving skills. So
yeah, it does, definitely.
Excellent.
Well, I'm excited to read the other reports. Like, I don't know how much, like us reading the Nordic reports, like reading ones that are based in America will kind of be interesting because that's our country, and be like, okay, like we got a nice little global view, but now what's happening
It'll be
here.
nice to see like the full differences from it too. Like,
Yes.
I think you'll be able to see pretty clearly.
Mm-hmm. All right, ladies. It was nice talking to you.
Okay, good
You
to see
too.
everybody.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.